The night air rests softly over the Roman countryside. Far from the crowded noise of the city, far from the echo of public baths and market streets, the land feels quiet and wide beneath the stars. A pale moon hangs over dark hills covered with olive trees and cypress. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and then falls silent again. The slow sound of insects drifts through the dry grass beside a narrow dirt road. A farmhouse sleeps beneath the warm darkness. Its walls are made of rough stone and pale clay. Its roof is heavy with reddish tiles that still hold the heat of the long afternoon sun. The farmhouse is not large. It stands low against the earth, built more for usefulness than beauty. Smoke from the cooking fire escaped hours ago through a small opening in the roof, and now only the faint smell of ash remains in the cool night air. Inside, most of the family is asleep. The oil lamp near the wall burns very low now. Its flame trembles gently whenever the night breeze slips through the doorway curtain. The floor beneath it is smooth from many years of sandals and bare feet passing across the stone. A tired farm worker shifts quietly in sleep. Nearby, another breathes heavily beneath a rough wool blanket. Children sleep close together on simple straw mattresses stuffed with dry reeds and old cloth. The room smells faintly of olive oil, wool, dust, and yesterday's bread. Outside, the animals rest in their small enclosure beside the house. A mule lowers its head slowly. Goats breathe softly in the darkness. Chickens remain still upon their wooden perch, their feathers puffed against the cooler air before dawn. The farmhouse settles into silence as if the land itself has grown sleepy. This is the world of an ordinary Roman farm. Not the marble world of emperors and triumphs. Not the loud world of crowded arenas or great speeches in the Senate. This is a quieter place. A slower place. A place where life follows the movement of sunlight, harvest seasons, and weather. Most people in the Roman world lived lives much closer to this. They woke before sunrise. They worked with their hands. Their backs ached from carrying water, lifting baskets, pulling weeds, and guiding plows through stubborn soil. Their days moved according to heat and rain and the changing colors of the sky. And tonight, beneath the soft darkness of the ancient countryside, we step quietly into their world. The farmhouse rests beside a narrow field planted with barley and wheat. Beyond that field lie rows of olive trees, twisted and silver beneath the moonlight. Farther away are vineyards stretching slowly across gentle hills where grapes grow heavy under the Mediterranean sun. During the daytime, the land is bright and dusty. Cicadas sing loudly from the trees. Warm wind moves across the dry grass. Workers bend beneath the heat for hours at a time, wiping sweat from their faces with rough cloths already stained by dirt and oil. But now the fields are still. The night has cooled the earth. Somewhere far away, an owl glides silently over the farmland. Its wings make no sound. The stars above the Roman countryside appear sharp and endless, untouched by city smoke. Inside the farmhouse, an elderly woman wakes for a moment. Her eyes open slowly in the darkness. For a few seconds she listens to the night sounds around her. The breathing of sleeping children. The distant rustle of animals. The faint crackle from dying embers in the hearth. She pulls her blanket closer around her shoulders. Years of labor have stiffened her hands. Even in sleep, her fingers curl slightly from long days of grinding grain, kneading dough, carrying baskets, and spinning wool thread beside the doorway light. Tomorrow will begin early again. Very early. Long before sunrise, the household will wake to begin another ordinary day. And ordinary days are what shape the life of the Roman countryside. The wealthy owners of large estates sometimes visited farms like this one, but often they lived elsewhere, perhaps in towns or cities where streets bustled with trade and politics. The daily care of the land usually belonged to workers, servants, freedmen, hired laborers, and farming families whose lives remained tied closely to the soil. This farmhouse belongs to one such family. Its courtyard is small but useful. Clay jars stand against the wall, storing olive oil, wine, grain, and dried beans. Wooden tools lean beneath the covered area near the stable. A stone basin catches rainwater during storms, though the summers are often dry for many weeks. Near the doorway grows a small herb garden. Rosemary, mint, garlic, a few onions. Simple plants for simple meals. Nothing here is luxurious. Yet the farmhouse is alive with routine, memory, and careful work. Every object has been repaired many times. Every piece of cloth is valuable. Every storage jar matters. Even the walls tell stories. Smoke stains darken the ceiling above the cooking hearth. Tiny cracks spread across old plaster where heat and cold have slowly changed the stone over many years. Near one doorway, faded marks remain where children once scratched games into the wall with bits of charcoal. The Roman countryside holds countless homes like this, scattered across hills and valleys, resting beside roads traveled by merchants, soldiers, and wandering traders. Some farms are richer than others, some larger, some poorer, but many share the same rhythm of labor and rest. And before dawn, that rhythm begins again. Slowly, the darkness starts to thin. The stars fade little by little above the hills. A faint gray color spreads across the eastern horizon. The air becomes cooler just before sunrise, and dew gathers quietly upon the grass. Inside the farmhouse, the old woman rises first. Carefully, she sits up from her mattress. Her joints ache in the cold morning air. For a moment she simply rests her hands in her lap and listens. The household still sleeps. She reaches for the oil lamp and shields the tiny flame with her hand while adding a little more oil. Warm light spills softly across the room, revealing rough blankets, sleeping children, baskets of wool, and clay cups stacked neatly near the hearth. Her sandals scrape quietly against the floor. Outside, she feeds small pieces of wood into the cooking fire. Smoke rises slowly into the pale dawn. Soon the smell of burning olive wood drifts across the yard. The mule shifts awake. A rooster cries somewhere nearby. Another answers farther away across the fields. Now the Roman countryside slowly opens its eyes. The woman begins grinding grain. The sound is low and steady. Stone against stone. A slow circular rhythm repeated countless mornings across the ancient world. Her arms move patiently as wheat becomes flour little by little. Soon another worker wakes. Then another. A young boy rubs his eyes while wrapping himself in a simple wool tunic. His hair sticks unevenly from sleep. Beside him, his younger sister remains curled beneath a blanket, not yet ready to leave the warmth. The father rises more slowly. Years beneath the sun have darkened his skin and thickened his hands. A scar crosses one forearm from an old farming accident involving a broken tool. His knees ache every morning now, especially during colder months. But there is work to do. There is always work to do. He steps outside into the gray light of dawn. The fields stretch quietly before him. Thin mist hangs low over the ground. Olive trees stand motionless against the brightening sky. For a few moments he simply breathes the cool air. This may be the calmest part of the entire day. Soon the heat will come. The flies. The heavy labor. The endless bending and lifting. But right now the world feels peaceful and still. The smell of baking bread slowly begins to drift from the farmhouse. Inside, dough is pressed flat by tired hands. Clay bowls clink softly together. Someone pours watered wine into cups for the morning meal. A child yawns loudly. Another scratches sleepily at mosquito bites along thin bare legs. Breakfast is small. Bread. Olives. Perhaps cheese if the household is fortunate. Sometimes dried figs. Sometimes porridge made from grain and water. Meals are simple because life is simple. The workers eat quietly while dawn spreads gold across the fields outside. Already the day is warming. The father checks the tools stored beneath the shelter wall. Wooden handles must be examined carefully. Iron blades must remain sharp enough for labor. Broken tools are difficult to replace and expensive to repair. Nearby, another farm worker prepares the mule. The animal's breath rises gently in the cool morning air. Leather straps creak softly as they are adjusted. Dust clings to the mule's coarse fur. Soon the workers begin moving toward the fields. Sandals press into dry earth. Voices remain low and sleepy. One worker carries a basket. Another balances a clay water jug against his hip. The children follow more slowly behind. Even young children work here. They gather olives, pull weeds, carry water, feed animals, frighten birds away from crops. Roman farm life leaves little room for idleness. Yet there are moments of softness hidden inside these routines. A mother brushing dust from her daughter's hair. A father lifting a sleeping child after evening meals. Brothers whispering together beside the stable after dark. These small moments pass quietly through ordinary days. The sun rises higher. Golden light pours across the countryside, warming the stone walls of the farmhouse. Birds flutter among olive branches. Insects begin singing loudly from dry grass beneath the growing heat. Work in the fields becomes steady and repetitive. Hands move through grain. Backs bend low. Sandals scrape through dusty soil. Sweat forms slowly across necks and foreheads. The workers speak only sometimes. Long hours of labor create their own silence. One worker wipes his face with a cloth darkened by dust and sweat. Another pauses briefly to stretch aching shoulders before returning again to the same endless motion. Above them, the Roman sky grows brighter and hotter. By midday the heat can feel almost heavy enough to touch. The earth itself seems to breathe warmth upward through the fields. Air shimmers faintly above distant roads. The smell of dry plants and warm soil fills the countryside. And still the labor continues. Because the land must be cared for every day. If weeds grow too thickly, crops weaken. If irrigation channels clog, plants dry beneath the summer sun. If olives are not gathered at the proper time, valuable oil may be lost. Farming is constant attention. Constant patience. Constant exhaustion. Yet this rhythm has shaped human life for generations beyond counting. A young girl carries water from a nearby well. The clay jar is heavy against her small arms. She walks carefully along the dusty path, trying not to spill too much with each step. Cicadas scream loudly from nearby trees. Sweat dampens loose strands of dark hair against her forehead. When she reaches the workers, they drink slowly and carefully. Water matters deeply in this warm land. Every drop carried beneath the hot sun requires effort. Nearby, an old worker kneels beside rows of vegetables growing near the farmhouse. His movements are slower now than they once were. Age has bent his back and stiffened his fingers. Still, he continues carefully removing weeds one by one from the soil. He has spent most of his life on farms like this. He remembers seasons of drought when crops failed beneath endless heat. He remembers winters of heavy rain when muddy roads became nearly impossible to cross. He remembers harvest festivals filled with music and tired laughter after long months of labor. And he remembers many faces now gone. Life in the Roman countryside can be peaceful. But it is rarely easy. Illness moves quickly through households where people sleep close together. A small infection from a cut hand may become dangerous. Fever can appear suddenly during humid summers. Hard labor wears down the body year after year. Even rest itself is often incomplete. At night workers sleep deeply from exhaustion, yet many still wake before dawn with aching muscles and tired minds already preparing for another day. The afternoon heat settles heavily across the farm. Work slows slightly now. The workers seek small patches of shade beneath olive trees or beside stone walls. They eat simple midday food while dust drifts lazily across the fields in warm wind. Bread again. Olives? Perhaps a few dried fruits. Perhaps lentils left from yesterday evening's meal. A boy lies briefly upon the grass, staring sleepily upward through olive branches moving gently against the bright sky. Bees hum nearby among tiny white flowers. For a few precious moments, nobody speaks. The land itself seems half asleep beneath the heat. Far away, along a narrow Roman road, a merchant cart slowly rattles past. Its wooden wheels creak against stone and dirt. Mules flick their ears against flies while drivers wipe sweat from their brows. Roads connect farms like these to towns and cities across the empire. Through them come salt, tools, cloth, pottery, news, taxes, soldiers, wandering travelers, and strange stories from distant provinces. But most people living on farms rarely travel far. Their world remains close to the land around them. The same hills. The same fields. The same changing skies above each season. And there is comfort in that familiar rhythm. As afternoon slowly begins fading toward evening, shadows lengthen across the countryside. The worst heat finally softens. Workers return again to their tasks with renewed patience. Grain is gathered into baskets. Animals are checked. Tools are cleaned and stacked carefully. Children chase chickens back toward the enclosure before dark. Smoke rises once more from the farmhouse hearth. The smell of cooking begins spreading gently through the warm evening air. Soon night will return to the Roman countryside once again. The evening settles slowly over the Roman farm. Warm orange light rests upon the fields like a thin blanket spread across the earth. The sun lowers behind distant hills, and long shadows stretch quietly between rows of olive trees. Dust hangs in the air where sandals and mule hooves disturb the dry road throughout the day. The workers move more slowly now. Their bodies feel heavy from hours beneath the sun. Hands are rough with dirt and grain dust. Shoulders ache from lifting baskets and tools. Even the children grow quieter as exhaustion settles into their small limbs. From the farmhouse hearth comes the steady smell of lentils cooking in an iron pot. A woman kneels beside the fire, stirring carefully with a wooden spoon darkened by years of smoke. The flames flicker softly against the stone walls. Nearby, flat bread rests upon a cloth while another woman crushes herbs with slow circular movements inside a shallow bowl. The room glows gold beneath the oil lamps. Outside, the air cools little by little. Goats wander back toward their enclosure without needing much guidance. Chickens scratch the ground for a few final moments before hopping upward onto wooden beams for the night. The mule lowers its tired head beside the stable wall, breathing slowly after the long day. A young boy carries water from the well one final time before darkness fully arrives. The clay jar presses against his hip. He walks carefully along the narrow path while insects sing from the grass around him. Above the fields, the sky deepens from pale orange into soft purple. Far away, smoke rises from other farmhouses scattered across the countryside. Each home prepares for night in its own quiet way. Somewhere nearby, another family bakes bread. Another worker washes dust from tired feet. Another old woman folds blankets for sleeping children. Across the Roman world, countless ordinary evenings unfold beneath the same fading sky. Inside this farmhouse, supper begins. The family gathers close around low wooden tables. Bowls are passed carefully from hand to hand. The lentils are warm and simple. Bread is torn into pieces and dipped slowly into olive oil. A few olives rest inside a clay dish near the center of the table. The workers eat with the deep hunger that comes only after physical labor. Yet even now the atmosphere remains quiet. Nobody rushes. The day itself has already demanded enough effort. An old man speaks softly about the condition of the western field. Another worries that rain may not come soon enough this season. Someone mentions a merchant seen traveling along the road earlier that afternoon. The children listen sleepily while chewing their food. One small girl struggles to keep her eyes open beside the warm firelight. Her mother brushes loose hair gently away from her face while continuing to eat. Outside, darkness thickens slowly across the land. The stars begin appearing one by one above the hills. Night in the Roman countryside can feel very large. Without city lamps or crowded streets, the darkness stretches deep across the fields and roads. Only small points of light remain where distant homes burn oil lamps against the night. The sounds change too. Day insects quiet themselves while night insects begin singing in their place. The air cools enough for soft breezes to move through the olive branches. Occasionally a dog barks far away before silence returns again. After supper, the household continues working. Evening is not fully a time of rest. There are still sandals to repair, wool to spin, tools to clean, grain to store safely away from dampness or pests. The labor of the farm changes shape after sunset, but it rarely disappears completely. Near the doorway, an elderly woman spins wool thread between patient fingers. Her movements are calm and practiced. She has done this thousands of evenings before. The spindle turns smoothly while lamplight shines across her lined hands. Beside her, a younger woman mends a torn tunic. The cloth is faded from washing and sun. Careful stitches pull the fabric together again little by little. Clothing must last as long as possible here. New fabric requires money, time, and labor that ordinary families rarely waste. Across the room, the father sharpens a farming blade with slow steady movements. Stone scrapes softly against iron. The sound blends with the crackle of the fire and the distant singing of insects outside. A small child sleeps already against his shoulder, too tired to remain awake any longer. The man pauses occasionally to adjust the child carefully without waking him. These quiet evening moments bring a different feeling to the farmhouse. The hard brightness of day is gone. The fields no longer demand constant movement. Now the world feels smaller, softer, enclosed within firelight and shadow. A young servant steps outside carrying a broken basket that will need repair tomorrow. The night air brushes cool against his skin after the heat trapped inside the farmhouse. He pauses beside the stable and gazes upward at the stars. Roman people often lived very close to the sky. Without bright artificial light, the heavens appeared enormous and clear above them nearly every night. Constellations moved slowly across the darkness with comforting familiarity. Travelers used them for guidance. Farmers watched them alongside the seasons. The servant listens quietly to the countryside. Somewhere beyond the hills, an owl calls once. The sound drifts softly through the darkness. Then silence returns. He breathes deeply before going back inside. The warmth of the hearth greets him immediately. Smoke and cooking scents cling gently to the air. The room feels crowded but comforting against the wide dark world outside. As the evening grows later, conversations become slower and softer. Exhaustion settles heavily across everyone. A worker stretches aching legs near the fire. Another rubs sore hands stained by soil and olive oil. One child curls beneath a blanket near the wall while listening sleepily to the adults speaking. The old woman spinning wool begins telling a quiet story. Not a grand story about emperors or battles. Just an old countryside tale remembered from her childhood. A simple story about changing seasons and wandering shepherds and storms that once crossed the hills many years ago. Her voice remains low and steady. The children listen with half-closed eyes. Outside, wind moves gently through dry grass beside the farmhouse walls. Hours pass slowly in the warm glow of firelight. Eventually the lamps begin burning low. One by one, the household prepares for sleep. Blankets are spread across mattresses stuffed with straw and reeds. Sandals are placed neatly beside sleeping areas. The fire is reduced carefully so that embers remain alive for morning without wasting too much wood. The youngest children fall asleep first. Then the older ones. The adults remain awake a little longer, speaking quietly in tired voices while darkness deepens around them. Finally, the father rises and checks the doorway. He looks once across the moonlit courtyard. The animals rest quietly. The fields beyond lie silent beneath silver light. Everything appears calm. He closes the door curtain and returns to his place beside the family. Soon only the soft sound of breathing fills the farmhouse. Night stretches onward. Hours pass beneath the drifting stars. Then slowly, almost unnoticed at first, the darkness begins thinning once again. Another day approaches the Roman countryside. Before sunrise, the farm wakes. The cycle begins again with quiet footsteps and dim oil lamps. The old woman rises first once more, as she nearly always does. Her body protests with stiffness, but long habit moves her gently through the darkness. Outside, the air feels cold against her skin. A thin mist clings low across the fields. The stars fade slowly overhead while the eastern horizon grows pale gray. She feeds the fire carefully. Small flames awaken among the ashes. Soon smoke curls upward through the roof opening while the first warmth returns to the room. One by one the others wake. The children move reluctantly from blankets. Workers rub tired eyes while dressing in simple tunics already worn smooth by years of labor. Someone coughs softly in the cold morning air. The smell of fresh bread begins again. Every morning resembles the last in many ways. Yet no two mornings feel exactly the same. Some mornings carry cool wind before rain. Others arrive already warm and heavy with heat. Sometimes clouds gather over the hills. Sometimes the sky remains endlessly blue for weeks. Today appears clear and dry. The father steps outside with a quiet sigh. He studies the sky carefully. Farmers always watch the sky. Too much rain can destroy crops. Too little can weaken entire harvests. Weather shapes nearly every part of life here. Nearby, a young worker begins milking goats into a clay container. The animals shift restlessly while morning insects hum through the grass. The milk will become cheese later if enough can be spared. Near the stable, another worker brushes the mule with slow tired movements. Dust rises softly from its coarse fur. The animal has worked many seasons already. Its muscles are strong but aging. Like the people here, it carries the signs of long labor beneath the sun. As dawn brightens, the countryside slowly fills with movement. Smoke rises from distant farms. Birds sweep low over the fields. Somewhere along the road, wheels begin creaking against stone as traders travel toward nearby towns. The Roman world wakes early. Work must begin before midday heat grows too strong. Today several workers head toward the vineyards. The grapevines stretch across gentle slopes where sunlight will soon flood the earth with warmth. Their leaves rustle softly in the morning breeze while workers inspect the plants carefully for damage or dryness. Vineyards require constant attention. Branches must be trimmed. Soil loosened. Insects watched closely. Water carried when necessary. Wine is valuable throughout the Roman world, and even small farms often grow grapes when possible. The workers move slowly between rows. Sandals press into dry earth. Hands brush across rough vine bark. The smell of soil and green leaves rises beneath the warming sun. A young boy follows carrying baskets. He tries hard to imitate the older workers, though his arms tire quickly. Dust clings to his ankles while sweat forms across his forehead. No one speaks very much. Morning labor often begins in silence. The body wakes gradually through movement itself. Nearby, women remain at the farmhouse managing different tasks. One washes clothing beside a basin while another kneads dough for later meals. A girl gathers herbs near the garden wall. An older woman checks stored grain jars carefully for signs of dampness or insects. Household work never truly ends. Even during quieter seasons, there is always cleaning, repairing, cooking, spinning, storing, feeding, carrying, washing. The Roman farmhouse depends upon constant care. Without attention, small problems quickly grow larger. A leaking roof during winter rain. Rotting grain during humid weather. A broken sandal during harvest season. Every task matters. As the morning continues, sunlight spreads brightly across the countryside. The cool dawn disappears. Heat begins rising once again from the fields and roads. Workers wipe sweat from their necks. Flies buzz around animals and baskets. The smell of warm dust fills the air beneath the growing sun. By midday, the land shimmers with brightness. A shepherd passes along a nearby hillside guiding sheep slowly through dry grass. Their bells clink softly as they move. The shepherd carries little beyond a staff, a water skin, and years of patience beneath the open sky. Farm workers pause briefly beneath olive trees for rest. Bread is shared again. Water passes carefully from hand to hand. One worker lies back against the tree trunk and closes his eyes for a few moments while cicadas scream loudly overhead. The heat presses heavily upon everyone now. Even the wind feels warm. Yet the countryside remains beautiful in its quiet way. Silver olive leaves flicker beneath sunlight. Distant hills fade softly blue against the horizon. Small white farmhouses rest among vineyards and grain fields like sleeping animals beneath the sky. Life here is hard. But it moves with a steady rhythm older than memory itself. And beneath the endless turning of seasons, ordinary people continue their quiet labor across the Roman land. The afternoon light drifts slowly across the vineyards. Heat settles over the countryside like a heavy cloth laid gently upon the earth. The workers move more slowly now beneath the bright Roman sun. Sweat darkens the collars of their tunics. Dust clings to their legs and sandals. Even the insects seem tired beneath the endless warmth. Far above the fields, hawks circle lazily in the pale blue sky. The shepherd and his sheep have already disappeared beyond the hills, leaving behind only faint tracks in the dry grass. Along the distant road, the sound of wagon wheels fades slowly into silence. For a little while, the farm feels almost still. The workers rest beneath olive trees whose branches twist and bend like old hands reaching toward the sky. Their silver leaves flicker softly whenever warm wind moves across the hillside. One man drinks carefully from a clay cup. Another removes his sandals briefly, rubbing sore feet darkened by dust and years of labor. Nearby, a young boy sits with his back against a tree trunk, trying not to fall asleep in the afternoon heat. The smell of crushed grass and warm earth rises around them. No one hurries. The hottest hours of the day are not kind to heavy labor. Even the animals seek shade now. Goats lie quietly beside stone walls. Chickens rest beneath wooden carts where the shadows remain cool. The mule stands motionless near the stable, flicking its tail slowly against flies. At the farmhouse, the women continue their work indoors where the thick stone walls hold a little of the morning coolness. A woman kneels beside a low table preparing vegetables for the evening meal. Her knife moves slowly through onions and herbs while sunlight spills softly through the doorway curtain. Another woman hangs damp clothing outside to dry in the warm wind. Inside, the old grandmother sorts lentils by hand. Her eyesight has weakened over the years, so she leans very close to the shallow bowl resting in her lap. Her fingers move patiently, removing bits of stone or damaged grain one piece at a time. This too is labor. Quiet labor. Necessary labor. The Roman world rests upon work like this, though few people beyond the countryside ever stop to notice it. In large cities, merchants sell bread in crowded streets. Soldiers march beneath banners. Wealthy families gather inside painted villas cooled by fountains and shaded courtyards. But far from those places, ordinary farms feed the empire day after day. Grain travels slowly from fields to mills and markets. Olive oil fills clay jars stacked onto merchant wagons. Wine from vineyards moves across roads and rivers toward distant towns. All of it begins here. With tired hands beneath the sun. As the afternoon stretches onward, clouds begin gathering faintly above the western hills. The workers notice immediately. Farmers always notice the sky. The clouds are thin at first, almost transparent against the bright sunlight. But slowly they grow thicker, drifting together across the distant horizon. Perhaps rain will come tonight. Perhaps not. Summer storms often arrive suddenly in this part of the world. Wind rises without warning. Dust swirls along the roads. Thunder rolls across the hills while thirsty earth waits below. The possibility of rain changes the worker's mood. A little more energy returns to tired bodies. One man studies the sky carefully while speaking quietly to another worker. If rain truly comes, certain tools must be moved under shelter. Grain sacks must stay dry. Water channels near the garden may need clearing. Nothing on the farm remains separate from weather. The land rules everything. The boy beneath the olive tree closes his eyes for just a moment too long and drifts lightly into sleep. His breathing slows while warm wind brushes through the branches above him. No one wakes him immediately. The adults understand this kind of exhaustion well. A lifetime of physical labor teaches the body to steal rest whenever it can. Nearby, cicadas continue singing in the heat. Their endless rhythm fills the afternoon air like the steady turning of time itself. Eventually the father rises. The break is over. Slowly the workers stand again, stretching stiff backs and tired arms before returning to the fields. Sandals scrape softly against dry soil. Baskets are lifted once more. The long afternoon continues. At the edge of the vineyard, rows of grapevines shimmer beneath the sunlight. The workers inspect leaves carefully for signs of insects or disease. Damaged branches are cut away with small iron blades. Fallen grapes are gathered from the ground before rot spreads further. The work demands patience more than speed. Many farming tasks are like this. Slow. Repetitive. Quiet. Hour after hour beneath the changing sky. A young worker wipes sweat from his face while carrying a basket toward the farmhouse. His shoulders ache deeply now. Dust coats his arms and neck. Yet he keeps moving with the steady rhythm learned since childhood. Most Roman farm workers begin labor very young. Children grow into adults through work itself. They learn the feel of soil between their fingers. The smell of rain before storms. The proper seasons for planting and harvest. The sounds animals make when frightened or sick. Knowledge passes quietly from one generation to another. Not through books. Through repetition. Through tired evenings and early mornings beside older workers whose hands already carry the marks of long experience. Back at the farmhouse, preparations for evening begin slowly. The old woman feeds small pieces of wood into the hearth while another worker grinds grain into flour. The sound of stone against stone fills the room once more. Outside, the sky continues darkening little by little. The clouds are closer now. Wind moves more strongly through the olive trees, stirring loose dust along the paths between fields. The smell of dry earth changes slightly as moisture gathers somewhere far away. A little girl stands near the doorway watching the clouds with quiet curiosity. She has seen storms before, of course. But each one still feels mysterious to her. The darkening sky. The sudden wind. The first heavy drops striking thirsty ground. Children notice small details adults often miss. The movement of birds before rain. The silence that sometimes falls suddenly across the countryside. The way animals become restless before storms arrive. Sure enough, the goats begin shifting uneasily in their enclosure. One worker secures the gate more firmly. Another gathers tools left near the garden wall. Wooden handles knock softly together as they are carried beneath shelter. The first distant thunder rolls quietly across the hills. Not loud. Just a low murmur beneath the sky. The workers pause briefly. Everyone listens. Thunder in the Roman countryside feels different without modern noise surrounding it. No engines. No electric hum. No crowded streets. Only wind, insects, animals, and the wide open land. Another rumble follows a little closer this time. Then silence again. The evening air cools slightly. Relief spreads gently across tired bodies as the worst heat finally begins to fade. Workers returning from the fields move with slower steps now, watching the dark clouds gather above the vineyards. A few drops of rain strike the dusty earth. They disappear almost instantly. Then another drop. And another. The smell arrives before the storm fully does. That deep earthy scent rising from dry ground touched by rain after long heat. The workers breathe it in quietly while carrying baskets and tools toward the farmhouse. Soon the rain becomes steady. Not violent. Not frightening. Just slow warm rain falling across the Roman countryside. Water darkens the stone walls of the farmhouse. Olive leaves glisten silver beneath the gray sky. Dust settles along the roads. Tiny streams begin forming through the fields and gardens. The workers stand beneath covered areas watching the rain with tired satisfaction. This is good rain. Gentle rain. The kind the crops need. A young boy stretches his hand beyond the shelter roof, letting cool drops strike his fingers. Nearby, an older worker smiles faintly while listening to the soft sound of water against the tiles overhead. For a little while, the farm rests. The rain itself seems to pause the endless movement of labor. Inside the farmhouse, the atmosphere grows warm and dim. Oil lamps glow softly against the darkened room. Steam rises from cooking pots near the hearth. Wet sandals are placed beside the doorway to dry. The family gathers close together while rain taps gently against the roof. There is comfort in storms when one is safely indoors, especially after long dry days beneath heavy heat. The grandmother sits near the fire wrapping wool around her shoulders. Her old bones feel every change in weather now. Nearby, children whisper quietly while watching water drip from the edge of the roof outside. The father examines a wooden tool handle cracked by age. Repair work fills many rainy evenings. Nothing useful is thrown away quickly on a Roman farm. Wood is reshaped. Rope is retied. Cloth is patched again and again until barely any original fabric remains. Life here depends upon care and patience more than abundance. The rain continues through supper. Tonight the meal feels especially peaceful. Warm lentils. Fresh bread. A little goat cheese. Watered wine poured carefully into clay cups. The workers eat while listening to the steady rainfall outside. Their bodies soften gradually into restfulness. Muscles loosen beside the warmth of the hearth. Faces glow gently beneath the lamplight. A small child falls asleep before finishing supper entirely. Her head droops slowly against her mother's arm while rain whispers softly against the roof above. No one wakes her immediately. The adults continue eating quietly around her. Beyond the farmhouse walls, darkness spreads across the countryside once more. Rainwater gathers in shallow puddles along the road. Frogs begin calling from low wet areas near the fields. The storm moves slowly eastward across distant hills. Inside, the lamps burn lower. The room smells of wet earth, smoke, wool, and fresh bread. One by one, the household grows silent. The grandmother yawns softly while setting aside her spinning wool. A worker stretches carefully beside the fire before settling onto his mattress. Children curl beneath blankets while thunder fades farther away into the night. The father steps briefly outside before sleep. Rain still falls lightly across the farm. Cool air brushes his face after the warmth indoors. He gazes quietly across the dark fields where faint moonlight now slips through breaks in the clouds. Tomorrow the earth will feel softer beneath their sandals. The crops will drink deeply tonight. For now, that is enough. He listens for a moment longer to the peaceful sound of rain moving through olive branches. Then he returns inside. The farmhouse settles gently into sleep once again beneath the ancient Roman sky. Morning arrives softly after the night rain. Before the sun rises above the hills, the countryside already smells different. The dry dusty scent of yesterday has faded. Now the earth carries the cool fragrance of wet soil, damp grass, and rain-soaked stone. Tiny drops of water cling to olive leaves outside the farmhouse. The sky remains pale gray for a little while longer as dawn slowly approaches. Somewhere beyond the fields, birds begin calling gently to one another through the quiet air. Inside the farmhouse, the family still sleeps. Blankets rise and fall slowly with tired breathing. The fire in the hearth has collapsed into glowing embers beneath soft layers of ash. The room feels cooler after the storm, and several children have curled closer together during the night. The grandmother wakes first again. She always wakes first. For a few moments she remains still beneath her blanket, listening to the peaceful silence around her. Rainwater drips softly outside from the roof edges. The wind has disappeared completely now. Even the animals remain quiet in the cool darkness before dawn. Carefully, she sits upright. Her joints ache more after rainy weather. One hand presses against her lower back while she slowly reaches for the oil lamp beside her mattress. The small flame flickers awake, casting gentle golden light across the sleeping room. She moves quietly through familiar routines. Wood is placed onto the embers. A clay pot is filled with water. Grain is measured carefully into the grinding bowl. These small motions have shaped nearly every morning of her life. Outside, the eastern sky slowly brightens. Mist lies low across the wet fields beyond the farmhouse. Tiny streams of water still trickle beside the paths where rain gathered during the night. The olive trees appear dark and heavy against the pale dawn. The grandmother steps outside carrying a wooden bucket. Cold damp air touches her face. For a moment she pauses beside the doorway and simply breathes. This hour belongs to the quietest part of the world. No tools striking earth yet. No voices calling across fields. No carts rattling along the road. Only birdsong, distant dripping water, and the slow arrival of morning light. Nearby, the mule shifts gently inside the stable. The old woman strokes its neck while preparing feed. The animal's breath rises softly in the cool air. Rainwater still glistens upon the stable roof above them. Soon other members of the household begin waking one by one. A child turns sleepily beneath a blanket. Someone coughs softly near the wall. Sandals scrape lightly across the stone floor. The smell of smoke and warming bread slowly fills the farmhouse once again. The father rises slower than usual this morning. Rainy weather often deepens the ache in his knees and shoulders. Years of lifting, digging, carrying, and walking long distances across uneven ground have settled into his bones like permanent weight. Still, he dresses without complaint. There is comfort in routine even when the body feels tired. He steps outside while fastening the belt around his tunic. The fields stretch quietly before him beneath soft gray dawn. Water shines faintly across the furrows between crops. The vineyard leaves sparkle with tiny drops left behind by the storm. This kind of morning brings relief to farmers. The rain came gently enough not to damage the land. That matters greatly. Too much rain can flatten grain or wash away precious soil. Strong storms sometimes tear branches from olive trees or flood roads until carts become trapped in mud. But last night's storm passed kindly over the farm. Now the earth drinks peacefully beneath the cool morning air. The workers gather near the hearth for breakfast. Warm bread passes from hand to hand. Goat cheese is shared carefully in small portions. One boy yawns repeatedly while trying to stay awake beside the firelight. Outside, dawn slowly becomes day. Golden sunlight finally touches the distant hills, spilling gently across the countryside. The wet leaves of olive trees shimmer silver and green beneath the growing light. Today the farm will feel different after the rain. Cooler. Softer. More alive. The workers head into the fields shortly after sunrise. Their sandals sink slightly into damp earth along the narrow paths. Moisture darkens the hems of their tunics where grass brushes against their legs. Birds flutter actively through the vineyard now, searching for insects awakened by the storm. Frogs still call from shallow puddles gathered near the edge of the road. The young boy from yesterday walks beside his father carrying a small basket. His energy has returned after the cool night. Children recover quickly from exhaustion in ways older workers no longer can. As they reach the fields, the father kneels to touch the soil with his hand. Dark. Moist. Good for the crops. He nods quietly to himself before standing again. Nearby, workers begin clearing small channels so excess water can drain properly through the farmland. Wooden tools press into soft ground with easier movement than during dry weather. The sound of work returns gradually across the countryside. Shovels striking earth. Goats bleating near the farmhouse. Voices calling quietly between rows of vines. The Roman farm wakes fully once more. Along the nearby road, a traveler appears through the morning mist. He walks beside a mule carrying several heavy sacks across its back. His cloak is dusty despite the rain, and his sandals are worn thin from long roads. Travel in the ancient world is slow and tiring. Roads stretch for miles beneath open sky. Inns are not always safe or comfortable. Rain, heat, illness, thieves, and exhaustion follow travelers constantly. The man pauses near the farmhouse gate. The father greets him politely while wiping mud from his hands. Hospitality matters deeply in many rural places. Travelers often depend upon the kindness of strangers for water, directions, or shelter from storms. The traveler asks quietly for fresh water and news of the road ahead. His voice sounds dry from many days of dust and walking. The grandmother brings water in a clay cup while the men speak briefly beneath the morning sun. The traveler comes from a nearby town several miles away. He carries cloth, oil, and small household goods meant for farms farther south. Along the road he has seen flooded crossings from last week's storms and one broken wagon abandoned near a hillside. News travels slowly through places like this. A passing traveler may bring the only stories heard from distant towns for many days. The children watch him with quiet curiosity. To them, travelers seem mysterious. They carry unfamiliar smells from distant roads. Strange accents sometimes drip through their speech. Their clothing may be patched differently than local garments. The young boy notices the traveler's leather sandals first. Thick straps reinforced carefully for long journeys. Much sturdier than his own. After drinking and resting briefly in the shade, the traveler thanks the family and continues along the muddy road. His mule moves slowly beneath its heavy load while morning sunlight brightens steadily overhead. Soon he disappears beyond the olive groves. The farm returns again to its familiar rhythm. Workers continue repairing small damage left by the storm. Damp grain sacks are moved carefully into better sunlight for drying. Roof tiles are inspected for cracks or leaks. A woman spreads washed blankets across a wooden fence where fresh breeze and sunlight can dry them fully. Nearby, children gather fallen olive branches broken loose during the rain. Nothing useful is wasted. Broken branches become firewood. Old cloth becomes patches. Worn rope becomes ties for vines or bundles. Roman farm life depends upon careful use of every resource. By late morning the sky has cleared completely. Warm sunlight returns to the countryside, though the air still feels softer than yesterday's heavy heat. Steam rises faintly from damp ground where the sun touches wet soil. The workers move steadily through their tasks. A pair of oxen pull a wooden plow slowly across one section of softened earth. Their muscles shift heavily beneath rough hides while the farmer guides them with patient calls and gentle pressure. The plow cuts deep lines through the dark ground. Birds follow behind searching for worms and insects exposed by the turning soil. The work is slow but satisfying after the rain. Dry hardened earth can fight against the plow stubbornly for hours. But moist soil opens more willingly beneath the blade. The farmer wipes sweat from his brow while continuing carefully across the field. His son walks nearby carrying seeds in a woven basket. The child tries to step carefully inside the footprints already left by the oxen. Mud clings thickly to his ankles, though he does not seem to mind. Children on farms grow comfortable with dirt very early in life. Dust during summer. Mud during rain. Ash near the hearth. The natural world remains close to them always. Near midday, the grandmother sits beneath the shade of an olive tree while repairing a torn wool blanket. Sunlight filters softly through the branches above her. A breeze carries the smell of damp earth and crushed herbs from the nearby garden. Her hands move slowly now. Age has reduced her speed, but not her patience. She remembers many storms like last night's. Many harvests. Many dry seasons. Many cold winters when wind slipped through cracks in the farmhouse walls. She has watched children grow into workers, workers grow into old age, and old age fade quietly into memory. Life on the farm changes slowly. The same routines continue through generations. Morning bread. Field labor. Evening fires. Night silence. The Roman countryside moves according to rhythms older than empires themselves. As afternoon approaches, the warmth returns more strongly. The damp ground begins drying beneath the sun. Insects hum loudly among the grasses once more. Workers seek short moments of shade whenever possible while continuing their labor. The little girl who watched last night's storm now carries herbs from the garden into the farmhouse kitchen. Rosemary, mint, wild garlic. Their fresh scent fills the warm room while she arranges them carefully beside the cooking area. Nearby, her mother kneads bread dough slowly upon the wooden table. Flour dust clings to her hands and wrists. Sweat shines lightly upon her forehead from the growing heat inside the farmhouse. Outside, cicadas begin singing again. The sound rises steadily through the afternoon air. The rain has passed. The farm continues onward. And beneath the bright Roman sun, another ordinary day unfolds quietly across the ancient countryside. The afternoon stretches slowly across the Roman countryside. The rainwater that cooled the fields during the morning has mostly disappeared now beneath the steady warmth of the sun. Damp soil begins cracking softly at the surface again. The roads grow dusty once more where wagon wheels and sandals pass. Above the farmhouse, the sky shines pale and wide without a single cloud remaining. Heat settles gently over the land. Not as harsh as yesterday, but warm enough to slow tired bodies. In the vineyard, workers move carefully between the rows carrying baskets and small iron knives. The grapevines rustle softly whenever wind drifts across the hillside. Bees wander lazily among tiny flowers growing beside the stone walls. A young worker pauses to straighten his aching back. For several moments he simply stands still beneath the sunlight, breathing slowly while staring across the fields below. From here he can see the farmhouse roof glowing reddish gold in the afternoon light. Thin smoke rises from the cooking hearth. Beyond it stretch olive groves, grain fields, and narrow roads winding toward distant hills. The Roman countryside feels endless sometimes. Farm after farm. Field after field. Ordinary lives spread quietly beneath the sky. The worker wipes sweat from his forehead before returning again to his task. Nearby, an older man carefully trims damaged vine branches left weak from the storm. His hands move with steady confidence shaped by many seasons of labor. He knows exactly where to cut and where to leave growth untouched. Too much trimming harms the vines. Too little invites disease. Farming requires balance more than force. Patience more than speed. The younger workers learn mostly through watching. There are few written instructions here. No painted diagrams. No organized lessons. Knowledge passes from older hands into younger ones through years of repetition beneath sun and rain. The old worker rarely explains much with words. Instead, he demonstrates. The angle of the blade. The feel of healthy leaves. The smell of spoiled grapes. The younger men watch carefully while pretending not to. This is how farming wisdom survives. At the farmhouse, the women continue preparing for evening. The grandmother sorts herbs into small bundles for drying. Their scent fills the shaded room with rosemary, mint, and crushed leaves warmed by sunlight. Nearby, a woman stirs goat milk slowly over gentle heat while preparing soft cheese. Steam rises from the clay pot. The room smells warm and rich after the fresh rain. A little girl sits beside the doorway twisting strands of wool between her fingers. She is still learning how to spin properly. The thread keeps tangling and breaking apart. Each time it happens, she sighs softly while her grandmother patiently shows her again. The old woman never scolds her. These skills take years. Everything on the farm takes years. Even childhood itself feels slower here. Children do not rush toward distant dreams or crowded futures. Their world remains close and familiar. They learn the paths between fields before they can fully read. They recognize weather signs before they understand numbers. The little girl watches her grandmother's hands carefully. Thin hands now. Wrinkled hands. But still steady. Outside, the youngest boy chases chickens through the courtyard despite being told not to. Dust rises around his sandals while the birds flap noisily away from him. For a moment laughter fills the farmhouse yard. Soft laughter. Brief laughter. Then the quiet rhythm of work returns again. Along the nearby road, two ox carts appear slowly through the afternoon heat. Their wheels creak loudly against stone and dirt. The oxen move with patient heavy steps while drivers walk beside them carrying long wooden staffs. The carts belong to a neighboring farm farther north. One of the drivers raises a hand in greeting as they pass. The father returns the gesture from the field. Life in the countryside can feel isolated, yet farms remain quietly connected through roads, trade, and shared labor seasons. During harvests, neighboring families sometimes help one another gather crops before storms arrive. Everyone understands how difficult the work can become. The ox carts continue southward, disappearing gradually beyond olive groves shimmering beneath the warm afternoon light. The day moves onward. Hours pass through labor. In the garden beside the farmhouse, beans climb rough wooden poles while onions dry beneath the sun. A woman bends carefully among the plants, pulling weeds from the softened earth after the rain. Her movements remain slow and repetitive. Kneel. Pull. Gather. Move forward. Repeat. Small stones press against her knees through the thin fabric of her tunic. Sweat dampens loose strands of hair against her neck. Still, there is a quiet peace hidden inside these routines. The sound of insects humming nearby. The warmth of sunlight across the shoulders. The smell of herbs crushed accidentally beneath careful hands. Simple things become important on farms. A cool breeze. Fresh bread. Shade during midday heat. Rain arriving at the proper time. The Roman countryside teaches people to notice such details closely. By late afternoon the shadows begin stretching longer once again. Golden light spills across the fields in soft bands between the olive trees. Workers grow quieter as fatigue settles deeper into their muscles. The father leads the oxen slowly back toward the stable. Mud dried along their legs during the day. Their broad sides rise and fall heavily with tired breathing. He pats one animal gently along its neck before removing the harness. Nearby, children gather scattered tools left near the vineyard rows. Iron blades must be cleaned carefully before night moisture returns. Wooden handles are stacked beneath shelter. Rope is coiled neatly beside the stable wall. These small evening tasks matter. Careless workers create larger problems tomorrow. The grandmother sits outside now beneath the fading sunlight. The warmth feels pleasant against her old bones after the cool rainy morning. She watches the family moving through familiar routines around the courtyard. Children carrying baskets. Women preparing supper. Men cleaning tools. Smoke drifting upward through calm evening air. She has seen scenes like this thousands of times across her life. Yet each evening carries slightly different colors. Different sounds. Different winds moving across the land. The little girl finally manages to spin a long smooth piece of wool thread without breaking it. Excited, she rushes toward her grandmother holding it proudly between small fingers. The old woman smiles softly. A rare full smile. Then she nods with quiet approval before showing the girl how to wrap the thread carefully for storage. The child beams with satisfaction. Tiny moments like this pass gently through ordinary days. No crowds witness them. No historians record them. Yet they form the true heart of life upon the farm. As the sun lowers toward the hills, supper preparations deepen. The smell of onions cooking in olive oil drifts warmly across the courtyard. Bread bakes near the hearth while lentils simmer slowly inside blackened pots. The workers wash dust from their hands and faces using water carried from the well. Muddy sandals are left outside near the doorway. One young worker pours cool water slowly over his head while standing beside the stable. The relief makes him close his eyes for a moment beneath the fading sunlight. The evening breeze feels wonderful after the long day. Birds settle noisily among the olive branches preparing for night. Far away, dogs bark from another farm hidden beyond the hills. The countryside slowly softens toward darkness again. Inside the farmhouse, the oil lamps are lit. Warm golden light flickers against the stone walls while supper is shared around the low tables. Steam rises from bowls of lentils and vegetables. Fresh bread is torn apart by tired hands. Tonight there is a little more cheese than usual from the morning milk. The children seem pleased. The youngest boy eats too quickly and coughs suddenly on a piece of bread. His mother hands him water while gently rubbing his back until he recovers. Small ordinary moments. Quiet human moments. The kind that filled ancient homes long before great monuments were built or famous battles remembered. Outside, the sky deepens slowly into shades of violet and blue. The first stars begin appearing again above the Roman countryside. After supper, the family remains together beside the hearth. The father repairs a leather strap damaged during field work. A woman combs tangles from her daughter's hair. The grandmother tells another old story while spinning wool in the firelight. Her voice remains low and soothing. She speaks of distant winters from her youth when frost covered the olive groves at dawn. She remembers travelers who once brought strange spices from eastern ports. She remembers a summer of terrible drought when entire hills turned brown beneath relentless heat. The children listen closely. Not because the stories are exciting. Because her voice itself feels comforting. Outside, night insects begin singing beneath the stars. A breeze moves gently through the courtyard carrying the smell of warm earth and distant vineyards. One by one the younger children fall asleep near the fire. Their heads droop heavily. Blankets are spread carefully across them without waking them fully. The adults continue sitting together quietly for a while longer. Nobody rushes toward sleep. After days filled with labor, these calm evening hours feel precious. Eventually the father rises and steps outside once more. The night is clear now after yesterday's storm. Stars stretch brightly across the sky in endless numbers. The road beyond the farmhouse lies empty beneath pale moonlight. Olive trees cast long soft shadows across the ground. He listens quietly. Somewhere nearby, frogs still call faintly from rain puddles not yet dried. Otherwise the countryside rests in silence. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again. Before dawn the household will wake. Bread will bake. Animals will feed. Fields will demand labor beneath the rising sun. But for now, the Roman farm sleeps peacefully beneath the ancient night sky. Deep night settles fully over the countryside. The farmhouse rests quietly beneath a sky crowded with stars. Moonlight spills softly across the courtyard stones and silver olive leaves. The warm sounds of the evening fire have faded now, leaving behind only the faint crackle of dying embers inside the hearth. Most of the household sleeps deeply. The children lie tangled beneath rough wool blankets. One boy has kicked his covering partly onto the floor during sleep, his dusty feet exposed to the cool night air. Nearby, his younger sister curls close beside her mother, breathing softly against her shoulder. The grandmother sleeps lightly as always. Old age rarely allows deep rest for very long. Several times during the night her eyes open briefly to the darkness around her. Each time she listens quietly to the familiar sounds of the farmhouse before drifting back towards sleep again. A goat shifts softly outside. Wind brushes through dry grass near the stable. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once beneath the moon. Then silence returns. The Roman countryside at night can feel endless and ancient. Without lamps along distant roads, darkness stretches across the hills like a great quiet sea. Small farms remain scattered far apart, their sleeping inhabitants hidden behind stone walls and shuttered windows. Travelers walking such roads after dark often move carefully. Potholes vanish into shadow. Loose stones twist beneath sandals. Wild animals sometimes wander close to isolated paths. Most people prefer reaching shelter before nightfall whenever possible. Tonight the roads remain nearly empty. Only a faint breeze moves dust gently along the ground where wagon wheels passed earlier in the day. Inside the farmhouse, the fire glows low and red. The father stirs suddenly in his sleep. For a moment he does not fully wake. His body shifts instinctively from dreams shaped by long labor. Even sleeping minds on farms often remain tied to work. The movements of plows. The sound of animals. The worry of weather. Finally he settles again beneath his blanket. Hours pass slowly. The moon crosses higher above the fields. A coolness spreads through the air before dawn. Then, little by little, morning begins its quiet return once more. The first sign is not light. It is sound. A rooster cries somewhere beyond the hills. Another answers farther away. Birds begin rustling softly among the olive branches outside the farmhouse walls. The grandmother opens her eyes. The day begins again. Carefully she rises from her mattress without waking the others. Her joints feel stiff from the cool night. One hand presses against the wall for balance while she reaches for the oil lamp beside her. The flame flickers awake. Warm light spills gently across the sleeping room. Outside, dawn remains only a pale hint beyond the eastern hills. The stars have not fully disappeared yet. Mist hangs low across the fields after the cool night air settled over the land. The grandmother steps into the courtyard carrying a small basket. The stone beneath her sandals feels cold. She pauses briefly beside the garden where herbs glisten faintly with morning dew. Mint leaves release their scent into the cool air as her skirt brushes gently past them. At the stable, the mule lifts its head slowly upon hearing her footsteps. The old woman speaks softly while placing feed before the animal. Her voice is quiet and calm, shaped by years of repeating the same gentle greetings each morning. Nearby, goats stir awake one by one. Soon the sounds of morning begin spreading naturally through the farm. Wood placed upon embers. Clay cups shifting against stone. Water pouring into bowls. The slow grinding of grain. Inside the farmhouse, the children remain asleep a little longer. Morning comes hardest for them during busy labor seasons. Their small bodies tire quickly after long days beneath the sun. The father wakes next. He sits quietly for a moment before standing, rubbing his face with rough, tired hands. His shoulders ache deeply today from yesterday's field work. Rain-softened soil had made plowing easier in some ways, but heavier beneath the feet. Still, the fields must continue being worked. There is no true pause in farming life. He dresses slowly before stepping outside into the cool dawn. The air feels fresh after the night. Mist still drifts across the lower fields. Birds sweep low over the vineyard searching for insects among damp leaves. Far away, smoke already rises from another farmhouse beginning its own morning routines. The father walks toward the garden first. He kneels beside the bean plants and examines the soil carefully with weathered hands. Moisture still rests beneath the surface. Good. Rain like that can sustain crops for many days if the sun does not grow too fierce too quickly afterward. He stands again while stretching his stiff back. The eastern horizon slowly glows gold. Another day approaches. Inside, breakfast preparations continue. Bread from yesterday is warmed beside the fire. Goat cheese is sliced into small portions. Watered wine is poured carefully into cups for the adults. The youngest boy finally wakes with a soft groan, still tangled beneath his blanket. His mother smiles faintly while brushing loose hair from his forehead. Children on farms learn early that mornings do not wait for anyone. Soon the entire household gathers around a low table. No one speaks much yet. Voices remain sleepy and quiet. Outside, sunlight finally reaches the tops of the olive trees, turning their leaves silver and green against the pale morning sky. Today several workers will head toward the grain fields beyond the vineyard. The recent rain has softened the earth enough for additional planting in one section near the road. Seeds must be carried. Furrows prepared. Stones removed from the soil before the sun climbs too high. The workers gather tools after breakfast. Wooden handles worn smooth by years of use. Iron blades darkened from soil and weather. Woven baskets patched many times. Nothing here appears new. Yet everything remains useful. The young boy carries a smaller basket beside his father as they leave the courtyard together. Their sandals leave faint marks in the damp earth along the path. Morning insects hum quietly among the grasses. The countryside slowly brightens around them. As they pass the vineyard rows, droplets of dew still cling to the leaves. Sunlight catches the moisture so that tiny flashes of light shimmer briefly across the hillside. The boy notices everything. A spider web hanging between vine branches. Bird tracks pressed into mud. The smell of wet earth warming beneath sunlight. Children often experience the countryside with sharper attention than adults burdened by routine. The father notices too, though more quietly. He simply no longer pauses for every small wonder. By the time they reach the grain field, other workers have already begun preparing the soil. An older laborer drives a wooden hoe into the earth with slow, powerful movements. Another clears stones into small piles near the edge of the field. The work begins steadily. No rushing. Farming rewards endurance more than speed. The father guides the boy carefully through the planting rows. Seeds are precious. Each handful matters. Too many scattered wastes grain. Too few weakens the harvest. The boy listens seriously while trying to imitate the practiced movements around him. His small fingers fumble sometimes. Still, he tries hard. The older workers say little, but they watch with quiet approval. The sun rises higher. Mist fades from the fields. Warmth spreads gradually across the countryside once again. By mid-morning the labor grows heavier. Sweat darkens tunics. Dust clings to ankles despite yesterday's rain. Flies buzz around the workers' faces and arms. The repetitive rhythm of farming settles fully over the day. Dig. Plant. Cover. Move forward. Repeat. The sounds become almost hypnotic beneath the warm air. Metal striking stone. Sandals brushing soil. Birdsong drifting across distant hills. Now and then a worker pauses briefly to straighten aching muscles before bending once more toward the earth. Nearby, a pair of women gather olives fallen early from several trees near the farmhouse. They kneel carefully beneath the branches while filling shallow baskets one piece at a time. Their conversation remains soft and occasional. One speaks about a neighbor's illness in a nearby village. Another worries quietly about whether next winter will be cold. Life on farms often centers around simple practical concerns. Health. Weather. Harvests. Food stores. Animals surviving the season. The Roman countryside teaches people not to expect certainty. Storms arrive unexpectedly. Illness spreads quickly. Drought can undo months of labor beneath the sun. Yet still people continue planting, repairing, carrying, harvesting. There is comfort in the repetition itself. As midday approaches, heat settles more strongly over the land. The workers retreat briefly toward the shade of olive trees carrying bread, onions, and water for the noon meal. The father lowers himself carefully onto the grass with a tired sigh. His knees ache sharply now. The boy sits beside him chewing bread slowly while staring sleepily toward the distant hills shimmering beneath the heat. Cicadas begin their loud afternoon song again. The sound fills the countryside like a steady curtain of noise. One worker removes his sandals to cool sore feet in the shade. Another lies flat upon the grass with an arm across his eyes. No one hurries to resume labor. These quiet midday rests are necessary beneath the Roman sun. The land itself seems to pause during the hottest hours. Even the wind grows still. The olive leaves barely move. Far away, the road lies empty beneath the brightness. For a little while, the entire countryside drifts into a warm sleepy silence beneath the endless ancient sky. The midday silence lingers gently over the countryside. Beneath the olive trees, the workers remain resting in scattered patches of shade while the hottest part of the afternoon settles across the land. The cicadas sing endlessly from the dry grass and stone walls. Their steady sound rises and falls like waves moving slowly through the heat. The young boy leans sleepily against his father's side. Crumbs of bread still cling to his fingers. His eyes drift half-closed while sunlight flickers softly through the olive branches overhead. Nearby, one worker snores quietly with his arm across his face. No one laughs at him. Exhaustion belongs to everyone here. The father drinks carefully from a clay cup before handing it toward the boy. Water must always be shared thoughtfully during warm months. Wells can grow shallow late in summer when rains disappear for too long. The boy drinks slowly. Cool water tastes especially precious after hours beneath the sun. Across the fields, the grain sways lightly whenever small breezes pass over the land. The rain from 2 nights before left the stalks standing stronger and brighter than they had during the dry heat earlier that week. Farmers notice such changes immediately. Healthy crops carry a different color. A different movement in the wind. A different smell beneath the sunlight. The father studies the fields quietly while resting beneath the tree. Good harvests bring relief. Poor harvests bring worry that can last through entire winters. Much of life here depends upon things no person fully controls. Rain. Heat. Disease. Insects. the changing moods of nature itself. Still, people continue working because there is no other choice. Eventually the old worker beneath the nearby tree sits upright with a low groan. The rest period is ending. Slowly the others rise as well. Dust clings to their tunics and arms after lying against the ground. One man stretches his stiff shoulders carefully while another tightens the straps of worn sandals before returning toward the fields. The boy sighs quietly. He would happily sleep another hour beneath the cool shade. But the work continues. Always the work continues. The afternoon labor feels heavier after resting. Bodies become slow beneath the heat. Muscles stiffen during stillness. Yet little by little the rhythm returns once more. Dig. Lift. Carry. Plant. The sound of tools striking earth spreads again across the countryside. High above, the sun burns white in the pale sky. Birds disappear into deeper shade during these hot hours. Even the goats near the farmhouse remain quiet now, resting beneath shelter beside the stable wall. Inside the farmhouse, the women move carefully through the dim cooler rooms while preparing the evening meal. The thick stone walls hold back some of the afternoon heat, though the air still feels warm and heavy near the cooking fire. The grandmother sits spinning wool beside the doorway where a small breeze reaches her. Her spindle turns steadily between practiced fingers. Twist. Pull. Wrap. Again and again. Her hands know these movements so well that she barely needs to think about them anymore. Outside, the little girl helps gather dry branches fallen near the edge of the olive grove. The branches will feed the cooking fire later tonight. She drags them slowly across the dusty ground into a growing pile beside the courtyard wall. Every piece of wood matters. Firewood cooks meals, warms winter nights, dries damp clothing, and keeps darkness feeling less lonely after sunset. The child pauses often beneath the heat. Sweat shines softly across her forehead. Dust sticks to her bare ankles. Yet she continues gathering branches carefully, trying to imitate the steady patience of the adults around her. In the Roman countryside, children learn responsibility quietly. No formal lessons announce it. The work itself teaches them. A nearby olive branch catches her attention for a moment. Tiny green olives have begun forming there already, hard and bitter now but slowly growing toward harvest months ahead. She touches one curiously before continuing her task. Seasons move through the countryside like slow breathing. Planting. Growing. Harvesting. Rest. Then beginning again. The grandmother watches the child from the doorway with tired, gentle eyes. She remembers doing the same work many years ago beneath the same kind of afternoon sun. Some things change slowly across generations. Some hardly change at all. Beyond the fields, a faint sound drifts across the heat. Voices. Then the creaking of wheels. A small wagon approaches along the dusty road from the east. Two men guide a mule pulling sacks covered by rough cloth. Dust rises around the wheels while sunlight flashes against small bronze fittings near the harness straps. Travelers again. The road never fully sleeps. The father notices the wagon first while working near the grain field. He straightens slowly and shields his eyes from the sunlight to watch the approaching figures. One of the men raises a hand in greeting. The wagon belongs to a nearby olive farm several miles away. Their harvest workers have come seeking help repairing a damaged cartwheel before tomorrow's journey toward town. Broken wheels are dangerous on Roman roads. A single cracked spoke can overturn heavy loads along rough hillsides. The father nods and walks with them toward the farmhouse courtyard where tools are kept beneath shelter. Soon several men kneel beside the damaged wheel studying the split wood carefully. The conversation remains practical and calm. Wood types. Road conditions. Distance to town. The heat. Always the heat. The young boy listens closely while pretending to stack baskets nearby. Adult conversations about roads and distant places fascinate him. He has traveled only short distances from the farm in his entire life. Towns feel mysterious to children raised in quiet countryside places. Crowded markets. Stone temples. Bathhouses filled with steam and voices. Soldiers marching through streets. Such places seem almost unreal compared to vineyards and grain fields beneath the open sky. One traveler notices the boy listening and smiles faintly. He describes a marketplace he passed last month where traders sold figs, cloth, pottery, and fish brought from the coast packed in salt. The boy's eyes widen slightly. The coast feels unimaginably distant to him. He has never seen the sea. Only heard stories of endless water stretching farther than sight itself. The men continue repairing the wheel beneath the shade. Wood creaks softly while iron fittings are adjusted carefully into place. Sweat darkens their tunics despite the shelter overhead. Nearby, the grandmother quietly offers watered wine and bread to the travelers. Hospitality remains important here. Roads are difficult enough without unnecessary cruelty between strangers. The travelers thank her respectfully. For a little while the courtyard feels busier than usual. Voices drip through the warm afternoon air. The mule stamps its hooves impatiently beside the wagon. Chickens scatter whenever someone walks too quickly through the yard. Then, after the repairs are finished, the travelers prepare to leave once more. The repaired wheel turns smoothly now. The father tests it carefully one final time before nodding with satisfaction. Coins change hands quietly. Not many. Just enough. The wagon rolls slowly back onto the dusty road beneath the lowering afternoon sun. Soon it disappears between olive groves shimmering softly in the heat. Silence gradually returns to the farm. Only the sounds of insects and distant tools remain. The afternoon begins slowly leaning toward evening now. The sunlight softens from white into deeper gold. Long shadows spread across the grain fields where workers continue gathering tools and finishing final tasks before dark. The father wipes sweat from his neck while watching the sky. No storms today. Only clear warm evening approaching across the countryside. The workers move more slowly now from exhaustion. Even simple motions feel heavier late in the day. A basket lifted. A shovel carried. A rope coiled beside the stable wall. The body longs for rest long before the work fully ends. Near the farmhouse, the smell of cooking drifts outward once again. Onions and herbs warm in olive oil beside the hearth. Lentils simmer slowly inside clay pots while fresh bread bakes nearby. The familiar smells spread comfort through the evening air. The little girl finishes stacking firewood beside the wall. Her arms ache from carrying branches all afternoon. Dust streaks her legs and tunic. Yet she feels quietly proud while studying the neat pile she helped create. Her grandmother notices and nods approvingly. No grand praise is spoken. None is needed. Children here learn satisfaction through usefulness itself. As sunset approaches, the countryside glows softly beneath amber light. The olive trees cast long graceful shadows over the ground. Birds call to one another while settling into branches for the night. Far away, smoke rises from neighboring farms beginning their evening meals. The workers wash dust from their hands and feet at the basin near the well. Cool water feels wonderful against sunburned skin. One young laborer splashes water across his face and simply stands there dripping for several quiet seconds with closed eyes. No one hurries him. Everyone understands. The day has been long. Inside the farmhouse, oil lamps flicker awake as darkness slowly gathers beyond the doorway. The family settles together for supper once more beneath warm firelight and the soft peaceful hush of another Roman evening. Night deepens slowly around the farmhouse. Beyond the doorway, the countryside fades into soft darkness beneath a sky scattered with stars. The last traces of sunset disappear behind the hills, leaving only pale silver moonlight resting gently across the fields and olive groves. Inside, the farmhouse glows warmly with firelight. The evening meal has nearly ended now. Empty clay bowls sit scattered across the low table beside crumbs of bread and small dishes stained with olive oil and herbs. The smell of lentils and cooked onions still lingers in the warm air. The workers lean back carefully after eating. Their bodies feel heavy with exhaustion. One man rubs his sore wrists while staring quietly into the fire. Another stretches stiff legs toward the warmth of the hearth. The youngest boy yawns so widely that his mother smiles faintly despite her own tiredness. Outside, insects sing steadily beneath the night sky. The sound drifts softly through the open doorway curtain along with cool air scented by dust, olive trees, and distant dry grass. The grandmother feeds another small piece of wood into the fire. Flames rise briefly, throwing moving shadows across the stone walls. The children watch the light dance lazily against the ceiling darkened by many years of smoke. For a little while no one speaks. The silence feels comfortable. Not empty. Just peaceful after a long day beneath the sun. Then slowly conversation returns in soft tired voices. The father speaks about the grain field near the eastern road. The rain helped there, though another storm may still be needed before harvest season fully arrives. One worker mentions seeing signs of insects near the vineyard earlier that afternoon. The grandmother listens quietly while continuing to spin wool. Her spindle turns slowly beside the firelight. The little girl sits close beside her now, practicing with her own smaller spindle. Her fingers still fumble sometimes, and the thread twists unevenly. Each mistake makes her sigh softly in frustration. Again the grandmother patiently shows her. Gentle hands guiding smaller hands. Ancient knowledge passing quietly through another ordinary evening. Nearby, the young boy fights sleep while listening to the adults speak about roads, weather, and crops. His eyes drift closed for a few moments before suddenly opening again. He does not want to miss the stories. Especially not tonight. One of the workers begins describing a nearby town festival that will arrive after the next harvest moon. There may be musicians in the market square. Merchants selling honey cakes and pottery. Perhaps even traveling performers passing through from larger cities. The boy listens carefully. Festivals feel magical to children raised upon farms. Not because of grand excitement, but because daily life here changes so little from one season to another. Any gathering beyond ordinary routines becomes memorable. The grandmother smiles faintly while listening. She remembers festivals from long ago when her own legs still moved quickly and her hair remained dark instead of silver. She remembers dancing beside firelight one autumn evening many years before this farmhouse even belonged to their family. The memory drifts softly through her mind like smoke rising from the hearth. Outside, the moon climbs higher. The countryside grows quieter as neighboring farms settle into sleep one by one. Dogs stop barking. Roads empty completely. Only the occasional cry of a night bird breaks the silence beyond the fields. Inside the farmhouse, the younger children finally lose their battle against exhaustion. The little girl curls against her grandmother's side, spindle slipping gently from tired fingers. The boy falls asleep with his head resting upon folded arms near the table. Carefully, the adults lift them onto waiting mattresses without waking them fully. Blankets are pulled softly across small sleeping bodies. The fire burns lower now. Its warmth spreads gently through the room while shadows deepen along the corners of the farmhouse walls. One by one, the adults prepare for sleep as well. Sandals are removed. Tools are set aside for morning. The last cups are rinsed with precious water and placed carefully beside the hearth. Outside, cool wind brushes through the olive trees again. The father steps into the courtyard before resting. This has become his quiet habit at the end of many days. He stands alone beneath the stars for a few moments while the farmhouse settles behind him into silence. The air feels cool against his skin after the warmth indoors. Above him, the sky stretches endlessly across the Roman countryside. Constellations drift slowly westward just as they did for his father and grandfather before him. The land smells peaceful tonight. Dry earth. Stone warmed all day by sunlight. Faint traces of wood smoke. He listens carefully. A mule shifts softly in the stable. Somewhere beyond the hills, water trickles faintly through a stream still fed by recent rain. Otherwise all remains still. Tomorrow will arrive soon enough. More planting. More carrying. More aching muscles and dusty roads beneath the heat. But tonight there is rest. He breathes deeply once more before returning inside. The doorway curtain falls closed behind him. Soon the farmhouse sleeps entirely. Hours drift quietly through the darkness. The moon crosses high above the fields and slowly begins descending toward the western hills. Cool night air settles lower across the countryside. Dew gathers upon grasses and vineyard leaves. Inside, dreams move gently through tired minds. The young boy dreams of crowded market streets and distant seas he has never seen. The little girl dreams of olive trees taller than temples and spinning wool without mistakes. The father dreams of fields. Always fields. Rain arriving at the proper time. Healthy grain bending beneath wind. Strong harvests. The grandmother dreams least of all. Her sleep remains light and shallow now, shaped more by memory than imagination. Several times during the night she wakes briefly. Each time she listens to the breathing around her before drifting once more toward sleep. The ancient farmhouse rests safely beneath the stars. Then slowly, far beyond the eastern hills, morning begins returning once again. First comes the pale gray light spreading softly across the horizon. Then birds. Then the faint restless sounds of animals stirring awake. The grandmother opens her eyes. Another day. Carefully she rises before dawn just as she has done for most of her life. Her feet know the floor stones even in darkness. Her hands know where the oil lamp waits beside the wall. Soon warm light flickers gently across the farmhouse once more. The fire is awakened from its bed of ash. Water is carried. Grain is prepared for grinding. Outside, the countryside glows silver beneath the first fragile light of dawn. Mist hangs low over the vineyard rows. Tiny drops of dew sparkle along the garden herbs. The air feels cool and wonderfully clean before the heat returns. The grandmother steps into the courtyard carrying a basket toward the chickens. They cluck softly while gathering near her feet. One bold hen pecks impatiently at the hem of her tunic while she scatters grain across the ground. Nearby, the mule watches sleepily from the stable doorway. The old woman pauses for a moment afterward and looks toward the eastern sky. The sunrise will be beautiful this morning. Already gold begins touching the edges of distant hills. A soft pink color spreads slowly upward through the pale clouds above the countryside. These quiet dawn moments remain her favorite part of the day. Before labor fully begins. Before heat and noise and exhaustion settle across the farm again. For a little while the world feels calm and gentle. Behind her, the farmhouse slowly wakes. A child coughs softly. Blankets rustle. Someone yawns heavily beside the hearth. The smell of smoke soon rises once more into the cool dawn air. The father emerges from the doorway while fastening his belt. He nods quietly to the grandmother before stretching his sore shoulders toward the brightening sky. The two stand silently together for a few moments watching sunrise spread across the fields. No words are needed. They have shared thousands of mornings like this. Soon breakfast preparations begin again inside the farmhouse. Bread warming beside the fire. Goat cheese divided carefully. Water poured into cups. Outside, birds sweep low across the grain fields where sunlight now glows golden upon the dew. The Roman countryside awakens once more beneath another ancient morning. And slowly, steadily, the quiet rhythms of farm life begin again. The sun rises gently over the Roman countryside. Golden light spills across the wet grass and stone walls, warming the land little by little after the coolness of dawn. Mist drifts away from the lower fields while birds move quickly through the olive groves searching for insects among the leaves. The farmhouse begins another long day. Inside, breakfast is shared quietly beside the fire. Bread warmed from yesterday crackles softly as it is broken apart by tired hands. Small pieces of goat cheese are passed carefully around the table. A clay cup tips gently while the youngest boy, still half asleep, struggles to hold it steady. His mother catches it before too much watered wine spills. No one scolds him. Morning arrives slowly for children. Outside, the smell of smoke rises peacefully into the brightening air. The grandmother kneels near the hearth adding more wood while the little girl arranges clay bowls after breakfast. These tasks are already becoming familiar to her. Every day adds another small layer of learning. The father steps outside carrying a bundle of tools over one shoulder. Today the sky appears clear again. No rain clouds gather over the hills. The air still feels cool for now, but everyone knows the heat will return strongly before midday. The workers begin moving toward the fields. Sandals scrape softly against dry earth and scattered stones along the narrow paths. The grain fields glow pale gold beneath the morning sun. Olive trees shimmer silver and green whenever wind touches their branches. A pair of doves lift suddenly from the roadside as the workers pass. The young boy follows close beside his father carrying a small woven basket. He tries to match the longer strides of the adults but occasionally must hurry forward after falling behind while staring at something interesting along the path. This morning it is a line of ants moving carefully across a stone. Yesterday it was bird feathers caught among vines. The countryside offers endless small discoveries to children who move slowly enough to notice them. At the edge of the vineyard, the workers separate into different tasks. Some continue planting in the softened fields beyond the road. Others inspect the olive trees for damage left by insects or weather. One older worker carries a ladder toward a section of roof tiles needing repair before autumn storms arrive months later. Farms never truly rest. There is always another task waiting quietly nearby. The father and two younger workers head toward a field where irrigation channels must be cleared before the next rainfall. Mud and loose plants have partially blocked the narrow pathways that guide water across the land. The work is dirty and slow. They kneel in damp soil pulling weeds and stones aside with tired hands. Mud darkens their tunics almost immediately. Sweat begins forming across their shoulders even though the morning remains young. The young boy helps carry small stones into piles near the field edge. He feels proud to work beside the adults. though secretly he also wishes to chase birds through the grass instead. Childhood on a farm often moves between responsibility and wandering imagination. Nearby, the older worker repairing roof tiles climbs carefully across the farmhouse top beneath the warming sunlight. The clay tiles shift softly beneath his sandals while he replaces cracked pieces damaged by age and weather. From up there the countryside spreads wide in every direction. Fields, roads, olive groves, distant farms resting quietly beneath the open sky. He pauses for a moment to stretch his aching back while looking across the land. Thin smoke rises from neighboring homes. A shepherd moves slowly across a distant hillside with his flock. Far away, sunlight flashes briefly against metal where travelers pass along the Roman road. Then the worker kneels again and continues his repairs. At the garden beside the farmhouse, the women gather herbs and vegetables for later meals. Mint brushes softly against their ankles while onions dry upon woven mats near the wall. The grandmother works more slowly now than the others. Age has reduced her strength, but not her usefulness. She knows which herbs ease stomach sickness, which leaves help soothe insect bites, which roots preserve best through winter months. Knowledge like this matters greatly in isolated places. Physicians rarely visit ordinary farms. Most healing depends upon memory, experience, and whatever remedies can be grown or gathered nearby. The little girl watches carefully while helping sort herbs into bundles. The grandmother names each plant softly. Rosemary, thyme, fennel. The child repeats the names quietly so she will remember. A warm breeze begins moving across the countryside by late morning. The cool freshness of dawn fades beneath growing sunlight. Dust rises again from the road where a merchant cart rattles slowly toward a distant town. The sound reaches the farm faintly. Wood creaking. Harness straps shifting. Mule hooves against stone. Travelers pass often enough to bring news, but not often enough to disturb the peaceful rhythm of the countryside. The father pauses briefly from clearing irrigation channels and wipes mud from his arms. His knees ache sharply from kneeling in wet soil. Nearby, another worker groans softly while lifting a heavy stone from the water path. Hard labor settles into the body slowly over years. At first young workers recover quickly after each day. Then gradually exhaustion lingers longer. Joints stiffen. Backs ache during cold mornings. Hands remain rough no matter how carefully they are washed. Still the work continues because the land demands it. Above them, the sun climbs higher toward midday. The shadows shorten. The cicadas begin singing once more from the dry grasses beyond the fields. Near the farmhouse, the youngest boy has escaped his small chores for a little while and now sits beside the stable drawing shapes in the dust with a stick. Simple ships, birds, large buildings he has imagined from travelers' stories. His mother notices but says nothing for the moment. Children deserve brief moments of wandering thought before work calls them back again. The mule watches him quietly while chewing feed. Flies drip lazily through the warm air around the stable doorway. Eventually the grandmother calls gently for the boy to help carry water from the well. He rises with a small sigh but obeys immediately. Even ordinary chores become tiring beneath the strengthening heat. The well sits a short distance beyond the farmhouse wall beside several worn stones smoothed by countless footsteps over many years. Rope creaks softly while the bucket lowers into cool darkness below. The boy loves the sound the water makes deep inside the well. A distant echoing splash far beneath the earth. Together he and the grandmother pull the heavy bucket upward slowly hand over hand. Water matters constantly here. For drinking, cooking, animals, cleaning wounds, washing dust from tired feet at the end of the day. Every drop requires effort. As midday approaches, the countryside grows quieter beneath the heat once again. Workers speak less. Movements slow. Birdsong fades while insects take over the sound of the land. The father finally straightens from the irrigation channel with a deep breath. The work there is nearly finished for now. Water will flow more smoothly after the next rain. Nearby, the young boy stands balancing carefully upon a low stone wall while watching dragonflies dart above damp ground. Their wings flash silver in the sunlight. For a moment he forgets the heat entirely. Then his father calls softly, and the boy jumps down to help gather tools for the midday meal. The workers move toward the shade of the olive trees once more. Bread is unwrapped from cloth. Olives are shared. Cool water passes carefully from hand to hand. One worker leans against a tree trunk and closes his eyes immediately upon sitting down. Another massages cramped fingers darkened by soil. The father lies back upon the grass for a few moments while staring upward through moving olive leaves. Sunlight flickers softly across his face. Above him the sky appears endless and pale blue. A hawk circles slowly far overhead. The warm afternoon breeze carries the smell of earth, herbs, and distant vineyards across the hills. The countryside feels sleepy beneath the heat. Even the children grow quiet now. The little girl rests her head against her grandmother's shoulder beneath the shade while listening to cicadas sing. The old woman gently strokes the child's hair without speaking. Around them, the Roman farm pauses briefly in the middle of another long day. Not fully resting. Never fully resting. But breathing slowly beneath the ancient summer sky. The afternoon drifts onward beneath the heavy summer light. Under the olive trees, the workers remain quiet for a little while longer after the midday meal. Bread crumbs rest upon cloth spread across the grass. Clay cups sit half empty beside tired hands. Warm wind moves slowly through the branches overhead, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant herbs. The father keeps his eyes closed for a few moments. Not asleep. Only resting. The sunlight flickers softly across his face through the leaves above him. Nearby, one worker softly hums an old countryside tune almost too quietly to hear. The melody blends with the endless singing of cicadas rising from the fields. The young boy lies on his stomach tracing shapes in the dirt with a small stick. He draws roads leading toward imaginary cities. Temples taller than olive trees. Ships floating upon waters he has never seen. Children on farms often build distant worlds quietly inside their minds while their bodies remain close to familiar fields and vineyards. The grandmother watches him without interrupting. She understands the feeling. Long ago, when she was young, she also listened to travelers' stories and imagined roads stretching beyond the hills into places filled with noise and color and strange accents. Yet somehow life always brought her back to farms like this one. Back to bread baking beside hearths. Back to fields beneath the sun. Back to the steady turning rhythm of ordinary days. Eventually the father opens his eyes and slowly sits upright. The rest is ending again. The heat still presses heavily across the land, but work waits patiently for no one. The workers rise one by one. Some groan softly while stretching stiff muscles. Dust clings to their tunics after lying against the ground. Sandals are tightened once more before returning to the fields. The afternoon labor begins slowly. No one rushes beneath this kind of heat. The father and another worker continue clearing stones from the planting field near the road. The younger men carry baskets toward the vineyard. The little girl follows her mother back toward the farmhouse garden where vegetables must be gathered before evening. The countryside resumes its quiet rhythm. Carry. Lift. Sort. Gather. Repeat. Along the road beyond the fields, heat shimmers above the stones like faint moving water. A lone traveler appears in the distance walking beside a donkey loaded with baskets covered by cloth. The figure moves slowly through the afternoon brightness. Travel during midday is difficult. The sun drains strength quickly from both people and animals. Dust coats the mouth and throat after hours upon Roman roads. Still, merchants continue traveling because trade never fully stops. Salt must move inland. Olive oil must reach towns. Wine must travel toward markets and ports. The traveler pauses briefly beneath a cypress tree beside the road, allowing the donkey to drink from a shallow stream left behind by the recent rain. From the field, the young boy watches curiously. He wonders again where the road leads beyond the distant hills. Perhaps toward the sea. Perhaps toward Rome itself. The empire feels impossibly large to children raised in small quiet places. Yet pieces of that larger world drift constantly through the countryside. Coins stamped with unfamiliar faces. Stories carried by travelers. Pottery shaped in distant towns. News of soldiers marching somewhere far away beyond the horizon. The father notices the boy staring toward the road. He smiles faintly before handing him another basket of stones to carry. Dreams are allowed. But work still comes first. The boy sighs softly and obeys. By later afternoon, the heat begins slowly softening. Long shadows stretch farther across the fields now. Birds return to the vineyard rows searching for insects among the leaves. Even the breeze feels cooler against sunburned skin. Near the farmhouse, the women prepare vegetables beside the doorway while speaking quietly together. Beans snap softly between tired fingers. Onions are peeled. Herbs are washed carefully in cool water from the well. The grandmother sits nearby repairing a tear in an old wool blanket. Her eyesight strains more now during dim light, so she works slowly and carefully. Beside her, the little girl practices spinning again. This time the thread holds together longer before twisting unevenly. The grandmother nods approvingly. Learning comes little by little. Like water shaping stone. In the stable, the mule shifts heavily while flies buzz around its ears. The young boy carries fresh water into the trough, careful not to spill too much along the way. The animal drinks deeply. Its rough muzzle splashes water across the stones. The boy laughs quietly and wipes his arm against his tunic. Simple moments pass gently through the afternoon. Nothing grand. Nothing important enough for historians to record. Yet these moments form most of human life. A child carrying water. A grandmother sewing beside a doorway. Workers gathering tools beneath the sun. The Roman world rests upon countless ordinary hours like these. As the sun lowers farther westward, the countryside begins glowing softly beneath golden light. Olive trees cast long twisting shadows across the ground. The grain fields ripple gently in the evening breeze. Dust hanging above the road turns amber in the sunlight. The workers feel the approaching relief of evening. Their movements become slower but calmer now. The hardest heat has passed. The father wipes sweat from his brow while studying the field they cleared today. Much work remains, of course. There is always more work waiting. But this section is better than yesterday. That small improvement matters. Nearby, a younger worker gathers scattered tools into neat bundles before darkness arrives. Iron blades catch the sunlight briefly while being carried toward the farmhouse. The little girl helps stack baskets beside the wall. The young boy chases several stubborn chickens back toward their enclosure while laughing breathlessly as feathers scatter around him. For a moment the courtyard feels lively and bright beneath the evening sun. Then gradually calm returns once more. Smoke begins rising from the farmhouse hearth again. The smell reaches the fields even before the workers fully return. Warm bread. Cooked onions. Lentils simmering slowly beside the fire. After long days of labor, these familiar smells feel deeply comforting. The workers wash at the basin near the well before supper. Dust and sweat streak the water running from their hands and faces. One man pours cool water slowly across the back of his neck and closes his eyes with relief. The father cleans mud from beneath his fingernails using a small stick while sitting quietly upon a low stone near the stable. The sky above the hills deepens into shades of orange and rose. Birds settle among the olive branches for the night. Far away, another farmhouse dog barks once before falling silent again. Inside, oil lamps are lit as shadows gather across the room. The family settles around the evening meal together. Tonight there are beans cooked with herbs from the garden, along with fresh bread still warm from the hearth. The little girl proudly tells the grandmother she spun nearly an entire piece of wool thread without breaking it. The adults smile softly at her excitement. The young boy describes the traveler he saw resting beside the road and wonders aloud where he might be headed. Perhaps to the coast, one worker suggests quietly. The boy imagines ships immediately. Large white sails moving across endless water beneath bright sunlight. The grandmother notices the distant look in his eyes. She remembers that same expression from many years ago on the face of her younger brother, who once left the countryside to work upon merchant ships. He returned only twice. Then never again. The old woman says nothing of this memory aloud. Instead she tears another piece of bread slowly beside the firelight while listening to the family talk. Outside, darkness deepens across the Roman countryside. The stars begin appearing one by one overhead. The air cools gently after the long heat of day. Inside the farmhouse, the children grow sleepy beside the warmth of the hearth. The youngest boy leans against his mother's side while struggling to keep his eyes open. The little girl curls beneath a blanket near the grandmother's feet. The adults continue speaking quietly about crops, weather, repairs, and the coming harvest season. Their voices blend softly with the crackling fire. Eventually conversation fades into comfortable silence once more. The oil lamps burn low. Night settles fully around the farmhouse. And beyond the stone walls, beneath the endless ancient sky, the quiet Roman countryside drifts peacefully toward sleep again. The night grows deeper around the farmhouse. Moonlight rests softly across the courtyard stones where the warmth of the day still lingers faintly beneath the cool air. The olive trees sway gently in the darkness whenever the breeze moves through the hills. Their leaves whisper quietly against one another beneath the stars. Inside, the household sleeps. The fire in the hearth has burned low again, leaving only a bed of glowing embers that pulls softly in the shadows. The oil lamps have been extinguished. Blankets rise and fall slowly with the breathing of tired workers and sleeping children. The grandmother lies awake for a little while longer. Sleep comes unevenly to old people. Her eyes remain open toward the dark ceiling stained by many years of smoke. She listens carefully to the familiar sounds surrounding her. A child murmuring faintly in sleep. The shifting hoof of the mule outside. Wind brushing softly against the farmhouse walls. She has known these sounds for so many years that silence itself would feel stranger. Slowly she closes her eyes again. Beyond the farmhouse, the Roman countryside stretches quiet and wide beneath the moonlight. The road near the fields lies empty now except for drifting dust and faint wheel tracks left behind by earlier travelers. Far away, another farmhouse dog barks once into the darkness. Then stillness returns. Hours pass softly through the night. The stars wheel slowly overhead. Cool dew gathers upon the vineyard leaves and grasses beside the road. Tiny night insects continue their endless songs beneath the sky. Eventually, almost without warning, the darkness begins changing once more. The eastern horizon grows pale. A faint gray light spreads across the hills. Morning approaches again. The grandmother wakes before the rooster calls this time. Her body seems to understand dawn before her eyes fully open. Carefully she rises from her mattress, wrapping a wool shawl around her shoulders against the morning chill. The farmhouse remains dark and peaceful. Children sleep heavily after yesterday's long labor. One boy clutches part of a blanket in both hands while dreaming deeply beside the hearth. The old woman lights the oil lamp. Warm gold flickers softly across the stone floor. Outside, the courtyard feels cool and damp beneath her sandals. Dew clings to the herb garden near the wall. The sky above still holds a few fading stars. She breathes deeply. These quiet moments before sunrise belong only to her. No tools yet striking soil. No voices calling across the fields. No heat pressing down upon tired shoulders. Only stillness. The grandmother begins the morning work slowly. She feeds the fire. Carries water. Grinds grain into flour with patient circular movements. Stone scraping softly against stone. The sound drifts gently through the sleeping farmhouse. Soon the mule begins stirring awake in the stable. Then the chickens. Then, farther away across the countryside, the first rooster cries into the pale dawn. Another day begins. The father wakes next. He sits slowly, rubbing sleep from tired eyes while stretching stiff shoulders. The ache in his back feels strong this morning after so many hours clearing stones from the fields yesterday. Still, he rises without complaint. The farm waits for no one. Outside, dawn light spreads wider across the land now. The olive trees stand dark against the brightening sky. Mist hangs low over the grain fields where the cool night air still lingers close to the earth. The father walks toward the stable carrying feed for the mule. The animal greets him with slow sleepy movements while chewing quietly beside the wooden trough. Nearby, the goats begin bleating softly as they wake. Soon the farmhouse fills with morning sounds. Children yawning. Clay bowls shifting near the hearth. Water pouring into cups. The smell of baking bread rising warmly into the cool air. The little girl wakes reluctantly this morning. She curls deeper beneath her blanket when her mother first calls softly for her to rise. The grandmother smiles faintly while watching. Even hard-working children remain children. Eventually the girl sits up with sleepy eyes and tangled hair while the youngest boy still sleeps heavily beside the wall. The father steps outside again while eating a piece of warm bread. The sky glows pale gold now beyond the eastern hills. Birds sweep low over the vineyard rows where dew sparkles upon the leaves like tiny pieces of glass. Today will be another hot day. He can already feel it in the stillness of the morning air. Several workers gather near the courtyard well after breakfast. Today much attention must be given to the olive groves. Some branches damaged earlier in the season still require trimming before disease spreads further among the trees. The workers collect ladders, baskets, and curved iron knives. The young boy carries rope over one shoulder while trying to appear stronger than he really is. The bundle nearly drags against the ground behind him. One older worker chuckles softly but says nothing. The group heads toward the olive groves together beneath the growing light of morning. The countryside looks beautiful at this hour. Golden sunlight spills slowly across the hills. Long shadows stretch between the trees. Cool air brushes against dusty sandals before the heat arrives later. The olive groves spread across gentle slopes beyond the grain fields. Some of the trees are ancient already. Twisted trunks thicker than a man's chest. Silver leaves moving softly in the breeze. These trees have watched generations come and go across the Roman countryside. The workers begin carefully inspecting the branches. Damaged limbs are trimmed away one by one. Fallen olives from weak branches are gathered into baskets. Dry weeds around the tree roots are pulled aside to help preserve moisture beneath the soil. The father climbs a ladder carefully while balancing a curved knife in one hand. Below him, the young boy gathers trimmed branches into piles for later firewood. Olive work requires patience. Too much cutting harms the tree. Too little invites rot and insects. Each branch must be judged carefully. The older workers move slowly and thoughtfully among the groves while sunlight brightens around them. Nearby, birds flutter among the branches searching for insects disturbed by the workers' movements. The little girl remains at the farmhouse this morning helping her grandmother prepare wool for spinning. They sit together beneath the shaded doorway where cool air still lingers. The grandmother shows her how to comb tangled wool gently before twisting it into thread. The child listens carefully. These quiet lessons matter deeply. Every skill learned becomes part of survival later. Inside the farmhouse, another woman kneads dough while humming softly beneath her breath. The sound mixes with the scrape of wooden bowls and the distant calls of workers drifting from the olive groves. Outside, the sun climbs steadily higher. The coolness of morning begins fading from the land. Dust rises along the road as a pair of travelers passes with donkeys carrying clay jars toward a nearby village. Their voices drift faintly through the warm air before disappearing again beyond the hills. By late morning the heat strengthens noticeably. Sweat darkens the workers' tunics among the olive trees. Hands grow sticky from sap and dust. The father pauses atop the ladder to wipe his brow before continuing. The young boy carries another armful of branches toward the growing firewood pile. His arms ache now. The branches scratch against his skin. Still he continues without complaint. Children learn endurance quietly on farms. One task after another. One season after another. The older workers occasionally exchange a few words while laboring, but mostly the grove remains peaceful beneath the sound of insects and rustling leaves. The countryside seems almost sleepy beneath the bright sky. Far away, the road glimmers pale in the sunlight. A shepherd guides sheep slowly across a distant hillside. Smoke rises thinly from farmhouses hidden among the fields. The Roman world moves steadily onward through ordinary labor beneath the sun. Near midday, the grandmother calls the workers back toward the farmhouse for the meal. The smell of lentils and herbs drifts warmly through the courtyard as they return from the groves carrying ladders and baskets. The young boy walks more slowly now, tired from the morning work. Dust covers his legs nearly to the knees. The father places a rough hand briefly upon the boy's shoulder as they near the farmhouse. No words are needed. The gesture itself carries quiet pride. Inside the shaded room, the family gathers once more around bread, olives, and warm food after another long morning beneath the ancient Roman sky. The afternoon heat slowly faded from the Roman countryside. Long shadows stretched gently across the olive groves while the final light of day settled softly upon the fields. Workers returned quietly toward the farmhouse with tired feet and aching shoulders. The sound of sandals against stone drifted through the warm evening air one last time. Smoke rose from the hearth. Bread baked slowly beside the fire. The smell of herbs and olive oil filled the small farmhouse as night approached once again. The children were quieter tonight. Sleep already weighted heavily behind their eyes. The young boy rested beside the doorway watching the sky turn gold beyond the hills. The little girl leaned against her grandmother while wool slipped softly through tired fingers. Outside, the animals settled calmly into the darkness. Goats rested near the stable wall. The mule lowered its head beneath the cool night air. Chickens tucked themselves silently beneath their feathers. And above them all, the ancient Roman sky slowly filled with stars. The family gathered together for the evening meal while oil lamps flickered gently against the stone walls. Voices remained low and peaceful. No one hurried. The long day had already taken everything it needed. Beyond the farmhouse, the countryside grew still. The roads emptied. The vineyards darkened beneath moonlight. Olive branches moved softly in the night breeze like quiet whispers across the hills. The grandmother listened to the familiar sounds around her. The fire settling lower. Children breathing sleepily nearby. Wind brushing the roof tiles overhead. These were the sounds of her life. Simple sounds. Steady sounds. The same sounds carried through countless evenings across the Roman countryside for generations beyond memory. One by one, the children fell asleep beside the warmth of the hearth. Blankets were pulled gently across small shoulders. The lamps burned lower. The adults spoke softly for a little while longer before silence slowly returned to the farmhouse. Finally, the father stepped outside one last time beneath the stars. Moonlight rested silver across the quiet fields. The grain moved gently in the cool wind beyond the olive trees. Somewhere far away, water drifted softly through a narrow stream hidden in darkness. The night felt endless and calm. No crowds. No battles. No great voices from history. Only the peaceful breathing of the land itself. He stood there quietly for a few moments beneath the ancient sky, listening to the soft world around him settle into sleep. Then he returned inside. The doorway curtain fell closed. The fire faded slowly into glowing embers. And the Roman farmhouse rested silently beside the fields while the countryside drifted deeper into the cool and endless night. Far above the sleeping land, the stars continued their slow journey across the sky. And beside the olive groves, beneath the warm darkness of ancient Rome, the world grew quiet at last.